Transactions fail between 75 to 90% in these cases. And when you have all of this, a launch mania like the one we saw with Trump will be mitigated to some extent. Raiku allows you to sell multiple products. So that's a core problem that we're certainly solving.
GM, welcome back to Solana Floor. Today we're taking on one of Solana's most hidden problems, which can and unfortunately does cost users heaps of money. Now, according to Raiku's founder, who we're about to hear from, they are addressing one of the most critical gaps in blockchain infrastructure: predictable execution at scale. And that's why Raiku recently raised $13.5 million to address Solana's transaction inclusion problem by ensuring predictable, guaranteed execution during periods of congestion. Now, they're doing this by using ahead-of-time block auctions, which we're also about to hear about today. So, why does Solana even need a parallel execution layer? What problems does this solve for the ecosystem? And what's next for Solana? Robin, GM, welcome to Solana Floor. It's great to have you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for being here. So, I want to start with Raiku. For anyone hearing about Raiku for the first time, can you just give us a very quick rundown of what you're building and how it actually makes Solana applications faster, more reliable? What are you working on?
Yeah, Raiku, high level, makes transactions, general systems or applications as fast performant as the traditional stack out there. So think Web 2 applications. Reason why this is important is if we want to bring on-chain primitives and all of the goodies that comes with to the wider market, such as, for example, TradFi, you need to meet their expectations, their requirements, and it shouldn't feel like a downgrade. And the good thing with that as well is once you enable that for them, that will then also exponentially improve the current applications that we have today on Solana. So
awesome. Before we dive a little bit deeper into the more technical stuff, I want to congratulate on the recent raise.
Thank you.
Off the back of that, I want to ask, why build Raiku on Solana? Was there something missing elsewhere that Solana got right?
Solana is a special place. I looked into many different networks, Aptos, Sui, Solana, and others. Solana was the only one who stood out on many factors. It has survived a couple of nuclear events. The tech stack is maturing, which is good. So now, okay, you reach the level of stability, which means you can build something foundational on top of it. The ecosystem has great founders. Sources of funding is also interested to fund new ventures and overall applications. And one thing I think is also often overlooked is leadership. I think coming from Solana Foundation and other contributing organizations is excellent compared to everything else that is out there, because there's a clear direction. Everyone is more or less on the same page, and it means that you just move so much faster. Solana stood out clearly.
I'm curious about some of the biggest technical advantages that you found. You mentioned Sui, you mentioned Aptos. Compared to these other high performance chains, from a technical perspective, what really stands out as the core reason that pulled you to Solana, made you build on Solana?
Yeah, so one is its underlying architecture and the attributes that comes with it. For example, Raiku works directly with the validator or the block producer, the leader, to reserve block space or resources to then later distribute that on the Raiku marketplace, packed with many, many different features. For that, you need the ability to see, okay, who is the next leader? There needs to be some sort of predictability there. The underlying clients have to have reached a stage of maturity so you can build on them and have supportive tools that allows you to do that, to build on top of it. And due to also the upcoming changes that Solana will have, so for example, MCL, Alpenglow, and a couple of SINDs such as 370 or 123, you can generally see that the case for something like Raiku really, really makes sense on Solana, where it is today and where it will be going into the future.
I want to ask you about the transaction inclusion problem, which is among the many things that you guys are solving. But just very briefly before that, if you look at how fast the Solana ecosystem is growing, and you mentioned some of the improvements that are coming to the ecosystem from a technical scale, You've got $15 billion in Solana stablecoins at the moment. RWAs are exploding. You've got tokenized equities that are exploding. Obviously, the meme coin transaction volume goes up and down. But what do you think is the core bottleneck, or what are the key pain points that needs to be solved at the network level? And then I want to tie that in also to the transaction inclusion problem, which again you guys are solving among other issues.
It all kind of goes full circle to some extent. Transaction inclusion problem. The one reason why we have it is spam on the network, right? We've known this. Why is there spam? Well, it's because you can't really know for certain if your transaction will land at a given time, at a given price. So you retry again and again and again and again. And you will see this on trading bots or other high frequency type of use cases. Transactions fail between 75 to 90% in these. And if you think about that, that means that they send so many transactions to the network that basically blocks access for the other ecosystem participants, right? So, or transaction senders. So if you can solve that to allow for the transaction sender to be able to predict and have some sort of guarantee that this transaction, this event will happen, then they don't need to do that. And when you can fulfill that property, then you free up space for everyone else, right? Happy days. So that's a core problem that we're certainly solving. That's done by ahead of time block auctions, which is driven by the Raiku sidecar and the Raiku node, where the market, the transaction sender, the developer, the application, are able to reserve block space ahead of time, let's say 6 hours or 1 hour, and then they receive this pre-confirmation or ticket that guarantees that their event will happen. And then they can wait. Then they can wait up until the time that the block will be produced for their ticket, and then send the transaction, and then the event will be actioned. So in that way, you certainly reduce a lot of spam, but there are other ways we also tackle this. So for example, we do pre-screening on most transaction types, which further reduces the spam. But we also allow for a new way of building applications, where you can, for example, merge off-chain architecture with your current on-chain L1 contracts. And then you're able to bundle X amount of transactions into one reference point, and then validate that on the underlying network, which further improves accessibility for other applications. So you free up space.
So it sounds like you're going through a series of processes to free up further and further and further space. And that'll be obviously amazing news to anyone who's listening to this, approaching it from a trading perspective. How does ahead of time block auctions work very specifically from that perspective of reducing congestion in very specific, almost black swan events when it comes to traders trying to land a transaction? And does it apply across the ecosystem?
Maybe let's start with the user. Where do you go? First, as a user, you won't really know if you're using Raiku or not. Like, there's not going to be a Raiku button or powered by Raiku. You go to an application which uses Raiku or has integrated to it. And in that way, you will experience its benefits. When it comes specifically to the question about the Trump launch mania, there's a couple of things here that is relevant. One, you should take into consideration that by integrating Raiku on the overall ecosystem, you will already have reduced the majority of the spam. So you will not have that issue in the first place, right? Great. That frees up space for any other ecosystem actors. If you know that there is a launch that is going to happen, let's say 60 minutes from now, that means you can plan for it, right? So you can book X amount of tickets or block space such that you know that your event will happen when the time comes. You can set up, and that's via the ahead of time block space marketplace. You can also use various different hedging strategies where the AOT market ahead of time would converge into JIT. And now you can hedge between the two different worlds, which is also interesting because you facilitate a completely new way of interacting with on-chain state. All of this taken into account, you essentially give a lot more tools for the developer or the user to control the environment that they're in, right? And especially for the sophisticated actors, you can combine many different primitives from Raiku to create these sophisticated strategies that allows you to really access state and make sure that this event is actioned by quite a lot of precision. And when you have all of this, a launch mania like the one we saw with Trump will be mitigated to some extent, at least best of efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So just zooming out for a second, we've spoken about benefits of Raiku for the network as a whole, for the ecosystem as a whole. We've touched on a little bit of the congestion issues that Raiku is mitigating. You mentioned earlier, though, the sidecar approach, which I believe benefits validators specifically. So how does that work? How does it maybe change the way value accrues across the network? I know validators in general have been bit of a focal point lately among the folks that like to discuss the technical sides of Solana land. So yeah, talk to me about Raiku's sidecar approach. What's changing for validator incentives?
Yeah. Okay, so high level first. If you are a validator today, you sell one product, and that's block space. Raiku allows you to sell multiple products, essentially. So we take what is one uniform set of block space today, and for simplicity, we split it up into different product groups, right? Where each of those groups have different features, different attributes. Those features, great for certain use cases, certain verticals, right? Which comes at a premium. So you essentially expand the products or the amount of products that the validator can sell with different pricing mechanisms and marketplaces. So this then would result in more revenue streams for the actual validator in itself.
So I should become a validator.
Yeah, go for it.
Excellent, excellent. There are, of course, other solutions out there that exist in terms of tackling some of these congestion issues, some of these block space issues. One of them that comes up often is the block assembly marketplace. I know they're not exactly the same thing. So for non-technical people like myself, can you sort of differentiate a little bit between what Jito's BAM does and what Raiku's doing, just so people get a sense of the different solutions that are being offered out there in Solana land?
Yeah, for sure. So Jito BAM shares a few similar goals to Raiku, right? Like faster applications, more powerful, more scalable, great. And also allow the developers to have more low-level control or application logic, which is also very important. So we share, a similar set of goals. However, how it's done, how it's achieved is very different. So Jito BAM is primarily based on TEEs or Trusted Execution Environments, which comes with pros and cons. The TEE environment essentially enforces you to construct 100% of the block with the restrictions that the TEE comes with in itself. And you also introduce a few new attack vectors or trust assumptions. But the underlying promise or USP of Jito BAM is what you could call a protected mempool, where the transactions are not exposed to any third-party actors, based on the assumption that the TEE environment is secure. Now, Raiku is not based on TEE, so we don't share the same limitation that a TEE has. So, for example, computational overhead and some additional trust assumptions or attack vectors. That's like the major difference when it comes to computational hardware, but there is also other differences such as how we construct the block, how much flexibility and freedom we give to the underlying validator as well to allow them to do what they're good at. For example, we don't take 100% of the block. We keep that to be, market dynamic, so we can match block reservation according to what the market demand is at any given time. And this is great for the node operator, but also for the ecosystem as a whole, right? Because you don't really enforce any major rule or limitation that would come by it. Yeah, and then back to the architectural and hardware differences. We don't have the computational or overhead and other limitations, which pretty much comes down to speed in many cases. And also the way Raiku has been constructed allows for greater flexibility when it comes to the architectural choices that the application developer has, which is important.
Clear. So I guess anyone watching this is going to be thinking at this point, when do I get to interact with an improved transaction experience? When is life going to be materially, noticeably better for me? When mainnet? These are probably some of the questions that people are wondering at the moment.
Yeah, so we have been running in DevNet for over 12 months now. We are releasing the public alphanet for everyone to interact with, but mostly for developers and validators. That will most likely come at some point in Q4 in 25, so this year. And then we're scheduled for mainnet early next year.
Super exciting. Any final thoughts you want to share with us? The more technical parts of the audience. Anything they should be aware of when it comes to Raiku rolling out in the coming months? Where can they maybe go and follow along with the updates? Where should they go?
Please go to Raiku.com, join the Discord group. We host weekly developer sessions. We will release a builders program in a couple of weeks. The builders program is where we will ensure that we facilitate all the requirements that the current builders out there have today, just in case we have missed some, and also help applications that is either on Solana today or new applications that is currently being built to really take advantage and ensure that the Raiku primitives is optimally serving their users and expanding markets, essentially. So Raiku.com, Discord, and follow along the journey there.
Super exciting. Robin, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And obviously looking forward to hearing a lot more about Raiku in the near future.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.